Well, in Dubai International Airport, of course, was closed for a little time during January after reports that drones were being flown dangerously close to aircraft. I think we've got the people here who can tell us really just how dangerous it is, how dangerous it was then, and how dangerous it's going to be in the future. So, Martin, if I can hand over to Martin Chalk, Deputy President of the International Federation of Airline Pilots Associations, to lead this first panel.
Thank you, Alan. Can I start by introducing the panel? To my immediate right is Michael Rudolph. He's Head of Aviation Regulation and Safety at the Dubai CAA, and he's currently developing the regulatory framework on RPAS within the Emirate of Dubai. One more to the right is, in your program, Nils Svan, although he's known as Solly, so that's how what we'll call him here. He's Vice President of Strategy, Dubai Air Navigation Services, and has a strong background in air traffic control, as does Michael. And on the far end is Dr. Rob Hunter, who's Head of Flight Safety at the British Airline Pilots Association. He's also a doctor, and he's previously headed up the Aviation Health Unit of the CAA. That's the panel. So, firstly, I wonder if we might frame a discussion on a subject that is quite broad. What do we mean by RPAS? And I don't mean that in the technical sense, but I mean in terms of their use. So the European Aviation Safety Agency has recently published a paper which splits RPAS into 3 groups that roughly comprise sort of, at one end, large, currently military replacement manned aeroplane type systems. And the question there is whether and how these can be safely integrated into current air traffic. And then the second group is smaller but commercially used RPAS for surveillance, monitoring, checking, etc., but essentially to be used to earn revenue. And the third group, the small, although they are growing in size, leisure RPAS. How should these last 2 groups, the small commercial and the small leisure RPAS, how should they be regulated, I guess is the question. So starting at the larger end, perhaps I could ask Michael initially, with large RPAS, military and or civil, how do we keep them segregated, right? Because at the moment they can't demonstrate an equivalent level of safety?
That's correct. From a military perspective, as we commonly see on the movies and on TV, the military RPAS, known commonly as a drone, carries ordnance. So especially in the region that we live in, they are often in the same airspace as commercial operations. So the current regulation prescribes that we have a separation above and a no-fly zone below the drone carrying military ordnance. And you can understand the impact on commercial air traffic, having something like that in shared airspace. From a commercial perspective, I think Solly will be able to speak a little bit more about the operations in Malaysia, where they've been very successful in incorporating civilian large-sized drones in the surveillance and checking of pipelines, etc.
In Malaysia, the large oil company Petronas, they are inspecting pipelines and power grids with the helicopter-like drone, and but they are the sole operator, and the DCAA in Malaysia has an agreement with the company to operate those things as a VFR aircraft, and it integrates in the control airspace with the civil traffic as such. The pilot who is maneuvering the aircraft from ground from a vehicle, he has a PPL, so he is although not a commercial pilot, but he, as I said, he's operating as VFR. That's one solution. It's simple when you are only operating with one operator, because you can test and validate your concept and easily get it approved.
Thank you. Moving on to small commercial RPAS, which I think is probably the area that is most pressing at the moment. Michael, maybe I could ask you what impact small commercial RPAS have had in Dubai. How do you regulate it? Where are you with both allowing the commercial opportunity whilst protecting the public and commercial aviation?
Well, I'm sure everyone is familiar with the events of the 23rd of January, which had quite a sizable impact on the commercial aviation operations within the Emirate of Dubai, as well as neighboring Sharjah. Quick overview is that the sighting of a UAV RPAS within close proximity to the flight path for Dubai, as well as at the time Sharjah, resulted in the closure of the airspace for 55 minutes. Needless to say, the financial impact that had caused a couple of people to get rather excited about where do we go from here. So from that perspective, it was negative on the aviation entity. From a regulatory perspective and other, it was a good thing because it brought to reality the fact that RPAS are being operated in the airspace on a daily basis. As far as the commercial entity is concerned, from a Dubai civil aviation perspective, I stand by the fact that I think we have a rigorous protocol in place with reference to our online application process that should any entity want to use a UAV for the purpose of videography, we have an assessment process that validates the areas, the timings, etc., and the impact, if any, on commercial operations. Subject to that, we issue a no objection certificate, and the no objection certificate is inclusive of the fact that we feel that the redundancy of the vehicle is satisfactory, that will not cause injury or disruption to third-party and commercial operations. That is the beginning of the framework that we're developing in specific for the Emirate of Dubai in collaboration with the federal regulator, and we're hoping to have that endorsed within the coming months that would be able to facilitate everything from a toy to the major commercial operations which have UAVs the size of a table.
Rob, can I ask you to bring us up to date with UK and EU regulation on the same?
Sure. So in the UK, RPAS below 150 kilos are subject to regulation by the UK CAA, and they broadly divide them into RPAS below 20 kilos and then in the 20 to 150 kilo range. The below 20 kilos are, line of sight, not above 150 meters, and the various articles of the Air Navigation Order, the sort of legal instrument for the CAA's control of aviation safety hazards in the UK, that apply to RPAS. And the principal one is the endangerment article. So whether it's RPAS or any other way that an aeroplane can be endangered, the CAA can act to do something about that. Above 150 kilos, and the certification and regulation rests with the EASA. But there's various moves afoot to change all that. As Martin alluded to, EASA recently published a concept of operations document in relation to RPAS. And there, I guess the division now is more about the intent of the use of the RPAS rather than the weight limits. But again, there are the three divisions that Martin talked about. Within that concept of use document, there are still a lot of unanswered questions about integration into airspace, airworthiness requirements and training and so on. Globally there's all sorts of initiatives as well by ICAO and by a group of all regulatory bodies called JARS. Yeah.
Thank you.
If I can just cotton on to that. So from a educational perspective, it's great to see that that concept is in play in Europe, but from the local perspective with reference to the GCC, we feel that we still need to have an educational program that would enlighten people of not only the various categories and the impact that it could have, whether it be negative or positive on commercial operations, but to encompass a culture of whereby we can look forward to facilitating not only the use of RPAs, whether it be in leisure or commercial, but also facilitating training opportunities and facilitating the allocation of specific areas and airspace. So I think until we get to a mature stage whereby the use or the not to be used RPAS entity is fully understood by the region, we sort of like very much in a learning curve and are looking at developing a regulatory framework that would encompass everyone to be on board and not be too hostile, forcing people to operate outside of the parameters of governance.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Moving into the last group, the leisure use of small and, as I say, they are growing in size. They're becoming much more accessible to lots of people. Can I ask all three gentlemen, perhaps starting at this end, Michael, do they carry a risk? Are they hard to legislate for? Where is the boundary between police enforcement of mischievous use of an RPAS and aviation authority enforcement because there is a hazard to aviation?
So I'm sure everyone in the room has at some time or other seen the fantastic videos that are available on YouTube and other depicting the use of RPAS videography. For those that are cricket supporters, like myself, South Africa, a fantastic use of RPAS is in the ICC World Cup at the moment, whereby fantastic footage, close-up footage of the players and the actual play is being broadcast live with the use of RPAS. So the difficulty is the fact that the pros are seeing what's available out there and the fantastic videography opportunities, whether it be commercial or the layman that's got a very simple unit that they use on their holiday to film what they would normally film on a still camera, to film by means of videography and take home to show the folks while enjoying the Sunday meal. The categories and the implications are that from a regulatory perspective, we need to decide and define where we are responsible to regulate. For an RPAS that is the size of a mobile phone and operated by a youngster that was given the unit as a gift, I don't think we want to be threatening and too involved in that. However, with guidance material made available, it would start at that age to ensure that they are proactive as regards where they can fly and what they can do, etc. So from our perspective, we're looking at the governance from a regulatory authority, from, I would say, commercial operations and those that are deriving revenue from the use of RPAS. That's where we are at the moment.
Okay, Nils?
Yeah,
Sorry.
We have been we have been working with this for a while now. Michael has been leading a cross aviation working group on how we are addressing this. And since they are available for sale almost everywhere, you have to capture the buyers already in the beginning by giving them maps depicting areas where they cannot fly on final approach and where other aviation activities are taking place. So we have a program of activities we are doing, and I think Mike can tell a little bit more in detail what we are doing.
Okay, so just quickly from a Dubai Civil Aviation perspective, we decided that we need to have a starting point, and the starting point would be for those people that are uncertain or not sure of the legalities of what they own and where they can fly, what they can do, what they can't do. We developed an information brochure which is available on our website at dcaa.gov.ae. And it's a working document. It's something that was formulated within the DCAA to get information out there and to stimulate interest. So what we envisage to do is to eventually have a form of registration with reference to RPAs, whether it be commercial or private, so that we know exactly what is out there. And then to define the categories, less on weight but more on the application, and as well as introduce the same brochure to incorporate it in the sales of RPAS. So as many of you might have seen in the fantastic shopping malls that we have in Dubai, that RPAS, for example, the Phantom 2 is readily available at the likes of Sharaf DG and even Virgin Active. So it's already out there. So what we've decided to do from a Dubai civil aviation perspective is to say, well, how can we enhance education of what is already out there and not work on a knee-jerk reaction whereby we try and recall and then have regulation that is too prescriptive and only applies to the larger entity, which is the commercial operation. And this has been ongoing now for some time, and I'm glad to say that we have moved forward quite rapidly in the past weeks, and are hoping to have a more prescriptive pamphlet brochure available, if not before the end of March, but hopefully by the early weeks of April.
Thank you, Michael.
So, Martin, your question was in two parts. It was what was the hazard? And, of course, there are many hazards to RPAS, privacy, nuisance, danger to people on the ground, and so on. But, of course, the hazard that we are concerned about as an association of airline pilots is the collision risk with an aircraft and interfering with safe operations of aircraft. And you'd also asked about what's the balance of regulatory responsibility. Well, in the UK, the way that the Civil Aviation Act is written is that the Civil Aviation Authority is responsible for the safety of British Airlines. And so basically, if something is a hazard to British Airlines, then it's the CAA's responsibility. Now, the way that it will often exercise that responsibility is it will identify a responsible person, a responsible entity, and they will have to meet requirements in order to be licensed to do stuff. And I guess the special issue with RPAS, especially down at the very light end, is that link of responsibility to the operator isn't so clear. So you have a hazard, but it's difficult to identify the owner. And for us, I think that's an additional hazard. Yeah. Okay.
So it's a regulator's dilemma then, I guess, particularly in a world of outcome-oriented regulation, less prescriptive and more, forgotten the word, I've swallowed my word, new style regulation, but focusing on outcomes rather than on ticking boxes. If you don't have somebody on whom to place the risk, then how do you regulate, particularly large leisure RPAS?
Well, I guess the thing that came into my mind on the small side, of course, is you've got the options of the criminal law and the police and all that sort of stuff. On the larger side, I guess you are more likely to have an identifiable operator and so on.
Okay.
Just quickly, from as you mentioned, the policing of it. We actually quite far down the road to get supporting legislation that would allow the police to take action on our behalf should there be a rogue operator operating outside of the parameters of guidance. At the moment, you can understand this is a relatively new entity and has only been highlighted due to the incursions of the 23rd of January. So from a police perspective, they really have had no legislation to back them to take action. So again, as part of the process, we're already well down the road to get that backing from the judicial system that would support the police on our behalf to take the necessary action if required.
Good. In our discussions this morning, we felt there would be lots of questions on this topic. So rather than me go on asking questions that you're not interested in, I thought we would finish our discussion early. So I just want to ask the panel, is there anything else they'd like to add before I throw open for questions? Is there anything you haven't said, gentlemen?
I mean, I think this point about a regulatory dilemma, I mean, maybe the regulators don't see it like that, but taking a sort of historical perspective, what I see is that there used to be in place forms of self-managed risk. Often those would fail and there'd be some sort of public outcry, and then you have regulation, and the history of many regulations follows that. But now we seem to have forgotten that, and we've just sort of launched into a fresh approach on self-managed risk. And I just see that as being vulnerable. And I think this issue about what happens when you can't identify the owner of that risk so easily really exposes all that. So I have quite a few concerns about it all.
From our perspective, we feel that a part of the stakeholder group shouldn't only be the aviation entities that are actually put at risk. It should most definitely include the manufacturers. And those of you that are aware of a specific name brand that is readily available, those manufacturers have brought in technology, for example, the magnetic blanket system, whereby through a process of GPS plots, they can identify certain areas either as restricted no-fly zones or otherwise sensitive areas, whereby that can be incorporated into the system that they sell, okay, and would not allow an infringement. So I think a key role to be played by the manufacturers to get them on board, because I'm sure they're looking at longevity as regards the sales of the units are concerned. But if countries around the world look at this as a really serious threat and decide to ban them, that's going to affect their bottom line. So we need to make sure that they're on board and to offer that assistance that we're looking at.
So how much, gentlemen, do you think we should drive regulation by thoughtful, in our usual way in aviation, thoughtful consultation with all the informed parties, and how much do you think regulation will be driven by events, as this is such a fast-moving area?
And by events, do you mean bad events?
They're normally the ones that drive us, aren't they?
The feeling I have in my bones is that there could be a development of regulation through the occurrence of serious incidents.
So, would anybody have any questions for our panel? I see one right in the middle there straight away.
Good morning. I'm a student from London City University, and my question is, from a regulation point of view, are you concerned with radio interferences caused by the frequencies the RPAs operates on?
I didn't get that.
Are we concerned by radio interference from RPAs on commercial aviation? Who would like to take that one up?
Okay, just quickly. So, yeah, the spectrum of frequencies that are available, if we look at the amount of sales of RPAS units throughout the world, could eventually be threatened, and in other words, become saturated. And ICAO have actually facilitated a workshop to look at that. For those of you that are familiar with the use of radio control aircraft, you know that you get a dedicated chip that you put into the radio, and it allows you to operate that specific aircraft on that frequency. Now, the RPAS is operated in the same sphere, and obviously the lower bands could quite likely be threatened in years to come because of the saturation of the frequencies. So yes, it's a threat.
Anybody else? The gentleman down here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Major Khalid Al-Ansari from UAE Air Force, instructor pilot and flight safety officer for the transport group. Well, it's a comment more than a question. I would like to attract your attention that those aircraft, small aircraft, unmanned aircraft, from my point of view, I don't really have a problem with those normal individual who's using those aircraft and creating a small hazard. I'm worried really about the terrorist use of using those small aircraft to carry small bombs and flying all the way to, an aircraft intentionally. So I think this has become a real hazard nowadays. We are in Abu Dhabi. We started procedures with the police to shoot those small, unmanned aircraft, especially for expeditions. If you noticed, we had IDEX took place a few weeks ago in Abu Dhabi, the defense expedition, and the procedure was there, implemented, and it's set up there and to be ready to shoot any aircraft, any unmanned aircraft flying, especially above the VIPs at the... however, but such kind of aircraft can be used really toward the aircraft. Everybody knows about Paris problem.
Yeah.
A month ago, I guess, and Sharjah, Dubai. So that's my comment about this subject.
Thank you. Anybody else? So, second table here.
Osman from Presidential Flight. Basically, there's a lot of challenge here. I know everybody knows this area. A lot of sensitivity in terms of flying overhead somebody's house, for example, or palace and so on. The question is, as long as there is no specific regulations and procedures, or putting it online so that people can see what's happening, it's difficult to control. And you can go to anywhere now, Dragon Mart, China market, to get anything you want, from the big table size to a faster jet. And I think I'm an ex-DCAA man here before. Now I'm with Presidential Flight as a safety man. I think the concern is, I think I do agree on the challenges that we're having here. This vehicle can be used for any sort of intention, whether bad or good. I think DCAA and CAA Dubai, or the rest of the police and military, should actually sit down and come up with a real control to provide places, areas that they can operate, to restrict areas that they're not supposed to, and also by having penalties. I mean, shooting down a drone is a bit too extreme, I guess, but however, knowing the challenges and the life that we are having now around this region, who can we trust? Right? Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I cannot trust even my own neighbor, because we don't know who they are. This is the new world. I think we need to do something fast. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, of course, it's a solution to shoot them down or ban the use of them and so on. But we in Dubai, in principle, we are trying to solve the problem instead of shooting them down. Our leaders in Dubai are supporting the use of drones. For those who doesn't know, there is a program just finalized a few weeks ago called Drones for Good, where Dubai has awarded various companies for various applications, everything from cleaning high-rise windows to minesweeping and counting cattle, and so there are drones for good, delivering goods and medicine to houses and so on. And we just have to bite the bullet and say, if we can't fight them, join them and educate them to do it in the right way.
Yeah, just to add on to that, first of all, the question raised about the the ordnance that drones can carry and the threat that they present to the high-profile parties that reside in the entire UAE. That is something that we would need to sit down with the security departments and including the military to see what the common solution would be to negate that. From a purely a civilian regulatory perspective, we are just trying to create governance and safety oversight for the use of drones in, let's call it, normal operations. I wouldn't classify or consider a drone that is being used for an act of terrorism and other to be normal. That can be developed outside of the norms, and it's something that we need to obviously consider, but purely from a civilian regulatory perspective, I don't think we are able to provide governance other than insight as to the mechanisms of drone operations. So.
Rob?
I'm reminded of something in your comment. Last year we had a government inquiry into drones in the UK, a House of Lords inquiry, and evidence was given to that inquiry, and it spoke of the very liberal regulatory regime in Europe and compared that with the United States. And the comment was made, it was something to the effect of that there were 300 drone operators in the UK, but none in the United States. And I think one was left to infer that what a great thing this liberalisation was. And I wondered to myself, how would this be read if we did have a serious incident? Okay, so we haven't yet, and we can feel good about the pace of this industry and trying to keep up with regulation. But for me, there is this important point about not letting the pace of the growth of the industry outstrip the regulatory capability to keep it safe.
Thank you. There was a gentleman on the second table here. Oh, and
there.
Go on, as you're there, please.
Hi, my name is Megha. I work with 7 Days. My question is from a UAE perspective. What is the cost of actually having to shut down airspace for that half hour or 55 minutes as it happened? And what should or what will the penalty for something like that be? Is it fine? Is it jail time? What should happen to people who cause that sort of havoc? Thank you.
The cost is enormous. If you calculate all the delays and aftermath of this and recovery of a closure of 55 minutes, I can't tell you how many zeros, but there are many.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, that we are working together with the legal department to legislate protocol that would govern people that transcend on that. At this stage, I wouldn't like to speculate what the ramifications would be, but it's seen in a very serious light, and obviously the penalties will be associated to that incursion.
Work and from Etihad Airways at City University of London. As an airline pilot, now we have heard a lot about these unmanned vehicles, like starting from the early 90s. They have developed very well and they have a very good range now. Is there anything like trying to integrate them with the airline system, like giving them a transponder code, and for us, for the pilots maneuvering big jets, if we see that, what are we going to do? Is there anything the industry is trying to integrate them, like putting a transponder or some kind of code so that we can be aware of these aircrafts and then avoid them? As you said, shooting is one solution around here, but as airline pilots, we're flying all over the world, and we can come across this kind of airplanes with 400 passengers on board. So what is the industry doing about integrating them into the airline system, like putting some kind of identification so we can see them and avoid them, like a TCAS or something? Thank you.
Okay, so I'll answer the first part, and Solly can give you the ramifications of that. There were suggestions, and to cotton on to what you are suggesting, is to maybe include a transponder, and you get really small and light transponders today. So maybe to look at the registration of drones and then to incorporate a transponder onto the drone so that you can identify its location. But from an ANSP perspective, I would just like Solly to describe what the radar screen would look like.
Yeah, it will be an enormous clutter and so on. But there are systems that are tracking drones with other methods and so on. But do we really need that? I'm not 100% sure. And for sure, we don't want them on the radar screens.
Yeah, and there are a number of civil aviations around the world, and there's a number of associations that have decided the best route of action is to ban them in its entirety, and that is their recourse. But specifically from a Dubai's perspective, the ruler, Sheikh Mohammed, is looking at a way whereby we can enhance, as Solly said earlier, the drones for good entity, and to see what the capabilities are, and therefore develop this technology within the Emirate of Dubai. And from a regulatory perspective, we are taking up the challenge to see how we can find synergy and harmony between the drone operators and keeping the commercial entity safe.
Thank you. Rob, from one pilot representative to another, do you think enough is being done at the moment to understand and mitigate the hazard from rogue drone operators?
Okay, I think I'm not going to quite answer your question the way that it was put. I think that an awful lot is being done, but I think the industry is running fast. I think the industry is running faster than the regulatory capability. So in that sense, the answer to your question is not enough is being done. But I guess I'd also say, I wouldn't like to be a regulator involved in trying to deal with this at the moment.
Okay.
And then, so yes, please go ahead. And then the next question from the back.
Connect to this one. Like when we talk about safety, we should talk about prevention. Like we lost their Malaysia flights, and then now we are all talking about yesterday about how to put a tracking system on an aircraft. And when we suggest these kind of things, we say that if we say that we don't need them on the radar, there are some technology and ways to differentiate these unmanned vehicles with the other airplanes. So there should be a way to produce this kind of technology and put them. Other than that, one day in the future we have an accident with unmanned and with 400 people dead, then the aviation will come and say, oh, okay, now we have to try to get this thing online. So we should think about it now before it gets too late and we get an accident. Thank you.
I mean, certainly at the European level, I'm aware of there's some important working groups that are looking on the integration of drones into airspace and how they'll, the technological challenges and solutions and so on. So that work is proceeding.
And at the back?
Just a quick question, probably for Mike, really. You stated that you're working on, in fact, I think it was nearly completed, a set of regulations for Dubai. Are these the same regulations, additional, or a complete standalone set that the DCAA are currently working on?
Okay, so that's a bit of a quandary. So, as I'm sure you're aware, you would have seen the news, the media report earlier this week about the actions being taken in specifically to Abu Dhabi with reference to banning the sales and operating of drones until such time as they have formulated robust regulation. So, from a Dubai perspective, we have developed framework, but we're also looking at an educational system and identifying areas within the Emirate of Dubai whereby we can offer the operators in a leisure capacity to go and fly the drones and to be trained on the proper use of drones. And of course, incorporating a limited amount of airmanship and awareness as to the environment in which they fly. Purely from a regulatory perspective, and the directive that we've been given from the DCAA is to formulate a framework of regulation that would not be too prescriptive. And prescriptive, I mean, we're not looking at a total ban of drone operations within the Emirate, but to see how we can encompass them safely, obviously, protecting the commercial entity at all time within the normal operations. As regards the GCA is concerned, yes, we will hopefully be working together to find synergy in the document that they publish as regulation, which would be mandatory for the entire UAE, and then as well as the local regulation that will be developed and promoted by the Dubai Civil Aviation Authority. So it's, at this stage it is sensitive, as there is an MPA out already. We have had the opportunity to comment, which we have done, and we're hoping that we can find common ground between both the regulators to formulate a regulation that would allow for all the flight deck operators to feel safe flying in the skies in and around the UAE.
Thank you, Michael. Right at the back.
The Higher College of Technology. I've been here more than 13 years, and I know that in that time, the UAE's had RC enthusiasts, and they pretty much regulated themselves, educated themselves. And it's only been recently when they brought all these quadcopters with remote cameras that every kid, and even my kids, they want to buy these things, and they just fly them around, not taking it as a serious, hobby or following any type of regulations. I was wondering if you're working with the Ministry of Communication, because I tried to get wireless cameras several years back before these quadcopters came on the market for my students to build RC aircraft. And I was told that wireless cameras were not allowed by Ministry of Communication. If Ministry of Communication regulates these cameras, I think you'll see that a lot of people will stop buying them because it won't be worth the hassle to try to register those cameras. So I'm just wondering if you're working with them at all, or if something changed that allowed these cameras all of a sudden to come on the market.
Okay. So quickly, again, readily available, the GoPro. You can buy it anywhere. You can get it anywhere in Dubai, get it online, etc., etc. And that's something that's commonly used on RPAs today to get some fantastic high definition footage. So I think the videography part of it is something that needs to be looked at, but from a regulatory perspective, we're looking at the entity itself and the penetration to the safety of commercial aviation. So as regards to the videography and the filming side of it, that needs to be addressed by another entity. From our perspective, we're looking at the actual the system itself and the threat the safety threat it could have on the commercial operation.
There's a hand down here at the front. Two, in fact.
Joachim Wirtz, Carter Aviation. I think it starts with advantages with this unmanned vehicle, and as a regulator, we slept a little bit. Now we have to deal with the disadvantages. And as Botai told us, we have to put the tiger back in the cage. And it makes no sense to shoot them down or to over-regulate something. I'm totally along with Michael. We have to define, let's say, the toys, and we have to give them guidance material, and we have to define the operators and the commercial issues. And there are big advantages. We have, for example, helicopter operation in Yemen, and everybody knows the situation in Yemen, and we replace now helicopter pipeline checking with this kind of means. And there is no base to regulate it, so we go also similar down the road as UAE is doing that and permit the operation, and then we think about how we can make it more solid.
Yeah.
But there is also hope. I don't know, maybe some of you know that. Next week is a big ICAO convent in Montreal to that topic, and there's a lot of good movement going on, and I expect that we have some, let's say, more solid regulations during that year. The big problem again is the harmonization. So if there is an operator operating in UAE and having a different kind of setup than in Qatar or somewhere else in the world, because these means are used mainly in crisis regions or for pipeline tracking or power plant tracking, whatever, then we create again difficulties. So I think we should then work together and share the information, maybe umbrellaed by ICAO or other leading organizations to have the same setup. Thank you.
Thank you. And anybody like to comment? Or?
Yeah,
yes,
agree.
Michael?
Yeah. No,
oh, you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah.
Jules?
I think a reference was made to JARUS, which is not only Europe, but it's about, I think, 20 states throughout the whole of the world that are working together, including South Africa, I think, on regulations.
Yeah.
But I think one other element also that you should not forget, when you have a regulation in place, these things will be operated, they will be manufactured. And in Europe, you see now a new kind of initiative, whereby the industry themselves, together with the operators and with the training schools, see how they can set up a training from bottom-up requirements. So, for example, now in German-speaking countries, at least about 5 in Europe, they are joining forces, and they try to standardize the way of how manufacturers should produce those machines. They also discuss with the manufacturers what they should put on the boxes in which they sell those things, to give a pre-warning, also for the leisure people. They also include the training schools, so they also have training schools for professional users, but also for leisure users. And at the same time, they also see how the pilots in the future also, because these things, they go also beyond sight, what you should do with that. So there is a kind of a bottom-up movement from users, manufacturers, how to set up a useful system, even with the regulations in place, which will be, as you say, very performance-based orientated rules. But then the fine and the eating will be in the way that you operate those new toys for the boys. And I think it would be good if you could also have a look what they are setting up, so that there is more or less also in the future easily for people to go around, find things not only in one state, but also for manufacturers to deliver them in Dubai or whatever here in the region. And that would be good also to include them in your draft of the regulations, because I think that would be a very good asset.
Yeah, definitely. If I can just go back to what I said right in the beginning, that we developed an information brochure on the website, and since we made that known through the media and other, that people that are not too sure as to the legalities of UAV operations within the Emirate of Dubai, we've had, and that's from the end of January, so we could say about 6 weeks, we've had to date 62 inquiries from local operators, and that's everything from a leisure operator to a full commercial operation that's been ongoing, to say, I have a UAV, where can I fly, where can't I fly, and what do you need from me? Now that's 62 UAV operators that we didn't have before, and those 62 are going to tell their colleagues, etc. So I think we've taken the first step. We haven't just sat on our hands, and I think that it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge, but I think we're up to it.
Well, thank you, panel. I just wrote down some comments here to sort of sum up. It strikes me that one of the big areas of challenge with regard to leisure use, non-commercial use, would be around education and how we reach the users of the UAVs, who I suspect are overwhelmingly not wanting to do any harm, and if they do, it is through naivety rather than maliciousness. It struck me that you can't use an iPhone until you have registered with Apple, and I wonder if cooperation with the manufacturers would not only allow the harder barriers around the very sensitive areas like airports, like high-profile individuals, etc., the areas that we need to protect, that would be enabled. But equally, you might be able to not start the UAV up until you had ticked that you'd read the information. And only when you'd registered that you'd read the information would the UAV then work. It certainly works for Apple. But it also strikes me that the quandary for the regulator is this balance between promoting commercial opportunity and protecting against the threat to other users of the airspace and the ground environment. So it's a really fast-moving industry, which is probably moving at the moment a lot faster than our capacity to think through the ramifications. And I'm with Rob. I'm really glad I'm not a regulator having to deal with this, Michael. Thank you very, very much to my panel. I wonder if you'd join me in thanking them for their input.